Between the ages of 13 to 22, every single month, like clockwork, I would literally ruin my life. I would burn bridges that I actually needed, spiral, cry over everything, be mean to people I love, pick fights, and the list goes on. All the insane things. I honestly felt like it was like a demon inside of me, but at the same time, I was like, this happens all the time. This is all I known for the majority of my life, so I must just be insane. And nobody told me, not a doctor, not a teacher, not a parent, that I was just in my luteal phase. As I got older, I understood that, yeah, my period affected my mood, but not to the extent that I understand now. And truly learning how my body works, why it works that way, and not seeing what was happening to my hormones as a curse, but rather as a tool I could use to actually become a better woman and do the opposite of ruin my life, completely changed the game for me. And I have never been the same. So I want to break down in excruciating detail everything that I now understand about my cycle, specifically my late luteal phase, and what I've done to use it rather than it use me. I would say that high school and university, so between 13 to 19, was like the worst era of dealing with the luteal phase and not knowing what it really was. I was just an irritable, sensitive, horrible person every 3 to 4 weeks. I'd snap at my parents if I had a love interest, snap at them. I would be a little bit mean to my friends, maybe. But the thing is, then I would hate myself for doing that. And during this period, especially as I got older, I was becoming more self aware. So I would always dig deep into myself and think, why am I like that? Why am I so crazy and weird and emotional? And, sometimes I'll have girl talk and I would talk to my friends about it and they would say they related to it. And we all kind of just concluded that that's just being emotional and crazy once a month, which makes sense because that's the rhetoric that you hear in society. And if you don't go seek out this information that I'm going to share, you're likely just going to live your whole life with that baseline understanding that women are emotional and erratic once a month, and that's just that on that. So I realized that this period of time was affecting the way I worked with my clients. I wasn't that good with calls with my clients during that time. If I was filming videos, I just wasn't as upbeat during that time. So I kind of just started to notice that and just shift things around. I would say no to things around that time. And I realized, oh, like this is a thing. And then I probably came across a TikTok that talked about cycle syncing. And I just became more aware of the different phases. And I started to track my cycle as well, which helped. I personally like Clue, and I've been using it for all this time because it has so many different options for putting your physical and mental state. So not only just for tracking my period, but I can go back and look at when I wasn't really bloated all the time. There was a period of my life where I was always bloated, so it was good to be able to track that. So if I were to go to the doctor, I'd be able to say, okay, I've been tracking all these times when I was bloated or when I was constipated or when it was this, that, and the third, and then it could be used in other areas of my life as well. But just to kind of cover the basics, your cycle has 4 phases. You have the menstrual, which we're most aware of, your period where you actually bleed. You have the follicular phase, ovulation, and then the luteal phase. The luteal phase is that 10 to 14 day period before you enter the menstrual phase where you actually bleed. I would say that this deep, dark feeling and kind of person that I never used to like starts at the beginning of the luteal phase and gets worse in the late luteal phase and kind of then begins to fade down when I actually get my period. I actually don't really get horrible cramps and my period doesn't really last that long. I would say between 4 to 5 days, and then it's super, super light. So I think also that's why it might have took me a little bit longer to understand what was going on, because I actually liked myself on my period. It was before my period that I would ruin everything. And when most people speak about being emotional and crazy, they speak about it in regards to when you're in your flow itself. So in this phase, your estrogen drops significantly, and estrogen is kind of like your feel-good socializing hormone. So there's that. But then also progesterone spikes, and that is what makes you feel super, super, super sensitive. And then at the same time, your cortisol also increases, which I think is more commonly been having a moment with cortisol face and all of that stuff on social media. In a nutshell, that is kind of like known as a stress hormone. So you have all of these things happening. Your body also starts to think that you might be pregnant, or it actually might be telling you you need to go get pregnant right now. Some women, me included, have a spike in libido during this time as well, which can also be really, really confusing to understand at a really young age, like right before your period, feeling these weird emotions and feelings inside of you. But because your body thinks you might be pregnant or is trying to force you to, it also thinks you're in danger. So everything feels huge because your brain is literally scanning for threats. Like that, just understanding that honestly will probably make you think a little bit differently. And I just think it's beautiful how God designed humans and how attentional everything is set up. But while that's all cute, you might be thinking, okay, Okay, cool, Danae. How does that help me not ruin my life every month? Let's get into the details. So we understand now that we're, let's say, emotional for a reason. But when I understood all of this information, I decided to just reframe it. And this is something I do in many areas of my life, making a reframe to help me think differently about something, which then helps me act accordingly. And then it changes the way that I show up. So I reframed the luteal phase from being an emotional, irrational phase to a phase where I could collect information. I became very in tune with the things that would make me feel irritable, or the things that would make me feel emotional, or the people that I was drawn to, or the people that I felt like I absolutely did not want to see during this time. Because of the heightened emotions, the data that you're collecting during this time is actually stronger and probably more aligned with your true nature in comparison to when you're feeling like a social hot butterfly in your follicular and ovulation phase. Oftentimes, this information is showing you what you've been tolerating, or the lies you might have been telling yourself, or the people that are in your life that don't actually give life to you. You might be giving life to the relationship, and that's what's making it fun. The reframe you need to make is that your period, or your luteal phase, if you want to be specific, isn't the enemy. It's not torture. It's a tool you can use to really understand yourself and the relationships you have, which ultimately will make it better. So in this time, I collect the data. I love to journal during this time and get all of those feelings and emotions on paper, but I don't act on it. Instead, I use it. And then when my period actually happens, as I say personally, I find that oftentimes there's a huge transition. Like once I get my period, the emotions just become neutral again. For me, that's the case. For you, it might be a little bit different. But all I would say is that when you feel neutral again, then it's time for you to look back on this data, look inwards, and say, okay, do I still feel this way? What did this time period tell me? And how am I going to act on that over the next few weeks before your luteal phase comes back again? And once I started doing this, life just started to get better, because instead of acting on the emotions in the moment drastically or crashing out, I would take the data, really think about it. And then when I was in a good place, I would be able to communicate to myself or to other people or to clients in a way that wasn't irrational, or in a way that was inviting, pleasant, honest, whatever word you want to put on it. So practically on your path of using the luteal phase, take notes on everything you feel, record videos, journal, whatever medium you want to use, but use that time to look inwards. Just because you're feeling more emotional or just because you're more pessimistic doesn't mean that it's not true. It just means you need to filter it after, when you're feeling neutral. Don't overschedule yourself in this time period. If you have a traditional job and you have to go to work, you have work. You don't have to meet a friend every day after work during that week. Allow yourself that rest. You're probably not going to feel like your best self. That means you're not going to show up for your friends in the way you need to. Maybe that's true for you, or maybe it's not, but that's the whole point of tracking this and then seeing after a few months what the actual patterns are. So then you can schedule accordingly. And a lot of times you'll have more cravings during this time. Just honor them. I don't like to indulge too much, because the luteal phase also makes me feel ravenous, so freaking hungry, but I just try and stay in tune with my body. I'm usually feeling like I want a bit more carbs than usual. Today, I had sourdough bread and potatoes in my breakfast. Usually that would make me feel so full and sick, having it all at once. But today I didn't. And I was honestly very happy with my decision, and it was very yummy. And that's okay. You know, I think before I didn't even realize that I would have so many cravings in my luteal phase, but it wasn't conscious. I would overindulge and I didn't really think about what I wanted. I just wanted everything. And I wasn't even in control of my choices. My emotions were. But now, because I'm aware, I have the ability to step back and just make intentional choices that I feel amazing about. And then if you have consistent reoccurring patterns coming up, your job every single time throughout every luteal phase is coming up, maybe that's a sign you need a new job, or maybe that's a sign you and your manager or somebody in your workplace need to have a conversation. Whatever it is, maybe it is your relationship what constantly comes up in your luteal phase. Why is it coming up? What are the patterns? What are the thought loops that continue to occur once a month, every 27 days in the luteal phase? Is it your confidence? Is it your body image? What is coming up? Those are signs that there's things that you might be repressing and can work on and can bring to the forefront during the follicular and ovulation phase, when you're more neutral, but you know what is true. You'll stop crashing out every month once you realize the pattern and you actually work on them when you are feeling better. And then, as I mentioned in the beginning, because I'm a freelancer, I was able to take this new information and plan my life around my cycle. So if I had any high energy things happening, whether it was parties, events, vacations, or client work, big projects, big things I wanted to launch, anything like that, I would try my absolute best to ensure that it was in the follicular or our ovulation phase because I had that control as a freelancer to plan it. And that's why I cannot shut up about why I think every woman should at least know how to freelance if they don't want to freelance full time. It just gives you so much autonomy. But I would pack all of those big things into those 2 weeks. And then I would do more of the quieter admin tasks, reflection tasks that are super important actually as someone who's self employed, working on the business, making big decisions in relationships and friendships, all of those. That the luteal phase is the best time to really dig deep within yourself and think about those things. And sometimes, obviously, things will happen or come up where they're just not in the good time of the month. But having that knowledge is what's important. So I'm filming this video right now in my luteal phase, but I'm aware I'm in my luteal phase. I know that during this time, if I want to feel a little bit more upbeat and better, I need to sleep a little bit longer. Usually 7 to 8 hours is perfectly fine for me, but in my luteal phase, I definitely need 9 to 10 hours of sleep. So I will do that. I will be much slower. I'll take time with things I'm doing. And if I feel a little bit irritable, I know, okay, to clock it. Why am I feeling a little bit irritable? What does this mean? Journal about it. And I try not to tell myself, oh, this is the crazy time of my life. I just think she's in her softer season of the month. And how beautiful is that? And then obviously, the complete rest when I take things easy for the most part is the menstrual phase. For me, only the first 2 days. And then after that, I'm honestly completely fine. As I said before, really the hard time for me is the luteal phase, both physically and emotionally. Yeah, I would say I'm truly blessed to have picked this freelance path for myself because when I'm in my menstrual phase, I wake up whenever I want. I don't set an alarm. I've never experienced having to force myself to go to work when I'm like having horrible cramps or having a really heavy bleed. And that is honestly freedom to me more than any luxury or trips or anything like that. Just having that sort of autonomy over how I'm physically feeling and how I show up. Because there are parts of the day when you're on your period where it's excruciating, and then other parts of the day where you feel kind of good and you can get things done. So I just schedule my day around literally how I feel. Once I start to feel better, I'll just get what I need to done and then back to sitting in my fetal position and cramps or whatever I need to do to get through the day. It's good to not have to force energy I don't have. So this is just a reminder that women are not crazy. We're just cyclical. And it's honestly so freaking beautiful how our bodies work for us and not against us. We're just not taught how to make use of that. When you stop resisting the cycles, everything softens and just makes sense. This is how I built better relationships, built a life I want, built a 6-figure freelance business without sacrificing myself, ruining my life. Honor your hormones, build around your biology, how we were wonderfully and beautifully made. And I promise you'll get paid too in the process. Bye.